Welcome to Occult Cases, Episode 1. I'll be your host, Kevin Roteris. This podcast is part of my journey into the paranormal, the occult, and the unknown, to find out what is real and what is not. As a believer of some, skeptic of others, but open to it all. I'll be interviewing real paranormal investigators, UFO researchers, Bigfoot trackers, and other experts in the field. I'll be examining real footage. And if you want your footage on the show, it must be your original. Send us the link or in a Google Drive to occultcases@gmail.com. Let us know who you are and where and when the footage was taken. I fell in love with the paranormal at a very young age. Started watching horror movies and sci-fi movies when I was 5. War of the Worlds from 1953 has been my favorite movie ever since. I obsessed over the idea of UFOs and alien life. I obsessed over it to the point where I'd go UFO hunting with my best friend in the farm fields all night. Ghostbusters 2 came out when I was 5 years old. The bathtub scene scared the hell out of me, but sparked an interest of ghosts and the paranormal. Then, same best friend had a copy of Nightmare on Elm Street. 5 years old, couldn't sleep for a week, but taught me to enjoy being scared. Years and many horror movies later, I started getting into EVPs and haunted places. I wanted to get footage of something paranormal myself. I found my first unexplained footage when I was 19. I investigated a place called the Hermitage, a ruin in Ancaster, Ontario from the 1830s. One of the most haunted places in the Hamilton area. I went with an ex-girlfriend named Jen, roughly around midnight. We brought an old VHS camera with 2 freshly charged batteries. There was an old wooden fence around the area with a small gap to enter from. The moment we walked through that, the cameras went from full to dead. After switching them back and forth a few times, we got one working, but it was last bar blinking. She was looking through the screen while holding the camera to her chest like here. I looked at the screen when she pointed it towards the Hermitage. You could clearly see 20, maybe even 30 orbs jumping across what's left of the roof. So we walked through and we went further in. She tells me suddenly to stop and walk back from where I was. So I did, out of curiosity. She said it looked like smoke went across the screen right after. So I walked by the camera again, nothing happened. I watched the footage after I got home. There was this thing, and even Jen's best friend, sister, and her mom claimed they could see faces in the smoke as it went by. Then we watched it play by play just to kind of just make sure. It being a VHS didn't make the best quality. I'm not saying there weren't faces in the smoke, but we could have been all freaked out and our imagination could have taken the best of us. Years later, I got involved with paranormal investigators. Professional ones that are skeptic basically of everything. Might be with paranormal TV shows. They freak out over every creak and crack an old house will make. Most paranormal investigators don't get anything most sites they go to. The evidence they can get usually can be explained, but there have been a few times we've had evidence that could not be explained. EVPs, footage. I've heard real EVPs of voices I did not hear during the recording session. I was standing right next to them. No one tampered with the recording. On our way to the studio to hear them after, we all heard them clear as day. I also had an experience while I was walking my dog. About a month before I shipped off to basic training when I joined the Army, I had a hard time sleeping, so I'd take my dog Marley at night and take him for a walk around the block. I still have him today. He's 12 now, and he was barely 1 at the time. I used to live downtown Hamilton in Ontario, and I lived around a corner from a place called Dundurn Castle, an old mansion built again in the 1830s. Now a museum and a historical landmark, with a public park built around it. I walked Marley on the trail that went around the park, and what went behind the Hermitage. The trail that goes behind has a small loop around a garden. It was around 2 a.m. and I was on that loop, heading towards the castle, and Marley reacted. I looked to where Marley was barking at, and I saw a man dressed like an old pioneer soldier. Knowing they do reenactments of the War of 1812, since part of it was fought there, I figured he's walking towards me pretty fast, maybe he needs some help. I calm Marley down and start to walk towards him. I call towards him, "Hey buddy, you alright?" He immediately stops, turns around, and walks away fast. I thought he wanted to get somewhere quickly. Maybe he wanted to show me something, so I pick up the pace and try to catch up to him. Just in case there's an emergency, you never know. As he walked out of the light from the castle, he walked into the shadow and completely disappeared. I walked over the area trying to figure out where he went. There was no signs of car or anyone else around but Marley and myself. For the paranormal, I believe there is more out there. What they are, to me, is still a mystery. Some say spirits of souls with unfinished business, others believe they're parallel universes colliding, and sometimes they can see you without you knowing. I'm not religious, but I wouldn't describe myself as an atheist. An atheist believes in the non-existence of God or a God. I'm open to the possibility, but haven't seen enough proof. I feel we are way too primitive of a species, since we know about things like gravity, but still don't have the slightest clue how it actually works, or how to control it, and when some people don't understand. It's easy to put on a powerful being as an explanation. The hardest thing people can admit is I don't know. Not knowing is terrifying. The possibility of nothing after death is horrifying. I was raised as a Roman Catholic. They made me question things because they would scold you if you ever questioned them, which led to my interest in hearing what others believe in the afterlife. From going to heaven, reincarnation, to parallel universe and ascension. Again, if you have proof that could change my mind, I'm more than open to it. When it comes to psychics, I'm a full skeptic. I've met many claimed psychics. All of them I've been able to explain. I've learned about cold reading and techniques, how they talk real fast and are very broad, so your mind makes the connections. Some of the best mentalists in the world even said they've met the greatest psychics in the world, but have never met a real psychic. Again, if you think you can change my mind, please email occultcases@gmail.com. If you're in the Calgary area, you're more than welcome to come on the show and prove me wrong. I'll never close the door on anything. I find the theory of multiple universes interesting, or the theory that our reality is actually a simulation. On a super advanced computer, and that's what ghosts could be from, glitches from a simulation. When Elon Musk was asked what he thinks is outside the simulation, he said boring, which makes sense because isn't that why we play video games? Just to be entertained? Not saying I believe in it, just find the idea very interesting. Bigfoot is another one I'd love to address. I'm on the fence with this one. The part of me believe it could be real. It's because it was a real species. An anthropologist named Ralph von Gunskwald, or something like that, some weird name of that, in 1935 found a fossilized tooth in a china shop. Later found a jawbone nearby out in China. After examining it, they found it could be an ape-like creature that stood on its hind legs called, let me make sure I do this right, called the Gigantopithecus. It lived in the Asian region about 100,000 years ago, which also during that time, the Bering Land Bridge was in place. That was a large mammal migratory route from Asia to North America. It is possible some have crossed over the bridge before the Ice Age was over and lived in the vast forests in North America. Forests so thick, you can easily lose sight of an animal 10 yards away. As a hunter, I know. Well, hasn't there been any good footage found? With the amount of game trail cameras out there, no photos from there? The problem with a lot of the footage is you can tell they're either a hoax or a bear. But some people believe in something so bad, they don't want to question it. If you think you have good proof of Bigfoot, send it our way. It might get your footage on the podcast or have you on as a guest. Speaking of finding Bigfoot, I have a guest coming in next week, a real Bigfoot investigator who claims to have had unexplained experiences, but still remains skeptic. So you might have guessed next week's topic is Bigfoot real? If there's a strange topic you want to hear, or have a story or an experience you want to share, put it in the comments section or email occultcases@gmail.com.